Welcome back to Lift Talk. This is episode 45. I'm here with my good friend Joe Stanek. It's been quite a few years since I've seen you. I think actually 9 years since I've seen you.
Correct.
Thanks for coming on and thanks for doing an in-person podcast. You actually came to Sydney just to do this podcast, right?
Totally. 100% the only reason.
So yeah, you're here in Australia from Pennsylvania, USA.
Yeah.
To coach a few people at our nationals this coming weekend. And I thought, hey, come on the podcast. We'll catch up, talk about old times, talk about new times, and talk some nonsense while we're here.
Love it.
I want to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests, which is, what is your first memory of the physical culture space, and how do you fall in love with weight training and make you want to pursue this journey?
You know, after you asked me to come on the podcast, listening to some episodes, I have been thinking about this question. And it's interesting because I didn't really grow up with a big sport background. I was actually kind of the kid that just resented sports, mostly because I sucked at them.
What's that like, Chris?
I had multiple stages. Fuck off.
But I think the turning point for me, and this is such a typical weightlifting answer. I think that the turning point for me was actually seeing bodybuilding for the first time. I was in my early teens and I saw pumping iron for the first time.
Sick.
And I just thought that was super cool. Mind you, I grew up with superheroes and stuff like that. So wanting to be strong and save people was maybe something that was always in the back of my mind. But definitely the turning point for me was probably watching pumping iron for the first time. I actually had a buddy that got me into lifting weights, which is really ironic because I coach him in powerlifting now all these years later. We watched pumping iron at his house and I was like, I want to do that. And that was kind of the big turning point for me. And I actually did end up competing. I think you might remember this. I ended up competing in bodybuilding when I was in my late teens and then never did it again.
A lot of people have that same kind of starting in bodybuilding without that foundation and then just destroying their relationship with diet and destroying their relationship with food and then never doing it again.
Yeah.
What scene from pumping iron was it which scene do you remember?
The specific one that I can think of was probably that initial scene in Gold's Gym where we see Arnold. I think he was training chest at the time, but I just remember him doing a set of flies, dumbbell flies, and being like, "Holy shit, dude is massive." And keep in mind, I'd seen Arnold in movies. Jingle All the Way was a classic in the Stanek household growing up, but I never knew Arnold's background prior to that.
You just thought he was a jacked actor.
Yeah, I just thought it was this really jacked actor. So seeing him perform that exercise and stuff like that after my friend had been really trying to get and when I say trying, dragging me out of my bed on Saturday morning to go to the gym and just it not clicking in my head, that scene in particular really made me go, oh man, wow, I would love to have a massive chest like that. And I mean, needless to say, I'm there. No, just kidding. But yeah, that particular scene was really quite cool. And then he sort of ruined it a little bit with the jokes about ejaculation in the gym
No, that's
and all that.
easily the best part of the movie. I was going to say my favorite scene, apart from that scene, because that's obviously the best scene, was the one where Lou Ferrigno is he's gotten to failure on a set of overhead presses, and then he starts saying Arnold for every single rep, and he does an extra 8 reps or something. It's fantastic.
You know what's so funny about that? If you learn about the behind the scenes of pumping iron, all of that was just to try to drum things up. The producers would tell his dad, Lou's dad, to try to make it seem like he was a lot more involved in his son's training than he actually was. And so that was purely just to get his dad involved for the story, even though in reality, he barely was.
So you're saying that bodybuilding is like professional wrestling. It's just all fake.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. Yeah. No one wants to hear that, Joe. Stop ruining the great sport for everyone out there.
Sorry.
I realized that we didn't actually get an introduction for yourself. So can you give everyone an introduction on on who you are and what you do?
Right. My name is Joe Stanek. I am a powerlifting coach of about 10 years at this point, which is kind of crazy. I have been powerlifting since I was a very young man. I just turned 30, dear God. I have been very lucky and privileged to work with many, many strong men and women around the world for a number of years throughout my career. Most recently, I had Austin Perkins win my first open world title for an athlete at IPF Worlds this past summer, and we just got done at Sheffield a few weeks ago. But many other wonderful career moments throughout there. Produced several national champions, few world record holders, few junior world champions, but this was the first open one, so that was definitely pretty special. So been doing that for quite a long time in many forms, and I don't know, you might call me a social media content creator, I guess, because I built a pretty big following on TikTok a long time ago. But other than that, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, so we kind of met online through the Strength Athlete, where I was being coached by one of the guys over there, and you came on as the intern, and then you actually came to Sydney to do like a semester abroad at UNSW, and then we trained at Lift together and hung out, and you came to Canberra and watched me compete very badly.
That wasn't that bad.
It was pretty bad back in 2016, and yeah, that was the last time we saw each other.
Yeah.
The funniest memory I have of that was we drove to Canberra, and I was cutting weight, like a lot of weight, and I don't think I'd eaten for like a day. And we get there, and you're like, man, I'm really hungry. So we go and find somewhere to eat. We go stop in at Guzman, and you order like, I don't know, a burrito and like tacos and nachos and like all this food. And I'm just like depressed staring at you, watching you eat all this food while I couldn't eat any of it. And yeah, that's my funniest memory from that weekend.
The funny thing about that is prior to that, I hadn't eaten for like a full 24 hours because my stomach had just been feeling terrible. So I was ravenous, which is why I ordered all of that food at the time. So yeah, insult to injury.
Rubbing
there.
it in my face, salt in the wounds. Yeah, so you mentioned you were at Sheffield with Perk just like a month ago.
Yep.
Tell me about the experience of Sheffield. What was it like compared to like world champions, compared to USAPL Nats, compared to PA Nats, compared to like all of the big meets that you've been to? Was this like a very clear step up?
I would say yes. I mean, I got to be real careful because Overlord Pete's listening. No, just kidding.
He probably is.
Love you, Pete.
What's up, Pete?
Don't hate me. No, it truly was the experience of a lifetime when it comes to being a part of a competition. You truly do feel like a professional at Sheffield. When we landed at Manchester Airport, they were there to pick us up. They sent a very nice driver with a Range Rover to get us. Drove us all the way to Sheffield. Checked us into this very, very nice hotel. Super spacious room. All that stuff. Basically, anything you could need, they had. The hotel itself actually had a gym as well as like a sauna if somebody needed to make weight. And they also would cart us around wherever we needed to go. So whenever Perk needed to train, we were taken out to SBD headquarters. If we really needed something, we could always just ask, and it was really cool. Really great food served there as well. The competition itself was just, again, loads better in terms of how everything was organized. We had assigned combo racks for the warm-up room. We knew everything about where we needed to go. Like, there was no confusion ever, and everything just ran like a well-oiled machine. And I mean, it's the third Sheffield. You would expect that to be the case. The really disorienting part was warming Perk up. You could just hear the audience because the warm-up room for Sheffield is in the basement of the city hall. You could hear the audience above us. Like, it was...
Yeah, because the women would have already started by that point, yeah.
Yeah, it was just unbelievably loud. and I don't know, like it didn't disrupt anything. It if anything, it gets you hype. And then you actually have to take the elevator up, which is a very cool feeling. You're just like, ascending up towards the platform. The other thing too is that they load all of your stuff for you. Like your warm-ups, you just ask them, and you have a team of loaders just slap it on.
Yeah, we had that here at our SPD Cup. We just had so many people who wanted to volunteer. So we were like, we don't have enough space for spotters. We'll just put spotters and loaders in the warm-up room. And it was like so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, then when Perk went out for his first squat, I took a second and I looked out and I'm like, oh, wow. And then after that, I was just kind of focused on him for the rest of the time. I suppose the number one thing that was really different was just kind of playing chess against all the other world champions. Perk has quite a good deadlift. I'm kind of used to him being towards the end of a flight. And so for him specifically, he actually hurt his back a week out, which kind of sucked. It made things very challenging for his bench press because he couldn't really arch fully. And deadlifts were just going to kind of be a coin toss on the day. So I don't know. He was kind of rushing things, and admittedly, I probably should have just gone with my gut because he was at the beginning of the flight and just said, let's just put what he has on the day and see what happens. But he seemed confident he could make an adjustment on his third so that we could pull for placing, and obviously it just wasn't there. It kind of sucks because we were hoping for somewhere in that like 870 range on the day, based on his lifts and training, which would have been really cool. But still coming away with a world record total, and I think it was 14,000 pounds. I forget the exact.
14,000? You mean 100?
No, 1,000.
1,000?
14,000 pounds.
14,000?
Yeah. He's still got 14,000 pounds
Oh,
for his
dollars. I thought you meant like LBs.
No.
I was like, what the fuck, dude?
No, British pounds.
Got you, currency.
Pounds sterling.
Got
yes.
it. Yeah, that's cool. Did you get a cut?
Man, dude, I wish.
I asked Jason Clark this when he came on, and he was like, I'll tell you after.
I wish.
I think Evie won a little bit more than what Perk did.
Yeah, if you're listening, no, just kidding. But the whole experience was really something else, and I'm excited to do it again. Do it again next year. Not to get too cocky, but I really don't think that anybody's going to be touching Perk, so he'll certainly be back, and who knows, I might have a couple more in the pipeline.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that if you like. Maybe a bit later on. Sure. What I wanted to talk to you about today, I think more so because this episode will come out after our nationals, is and that's most of our audience is Australian, and they'll be listening after having competed at nationals or having watched people compete at nationals. Is what do we do in a post-competition period? And obviously you've coached Perks in a post-competition period right now, and other people who you coach would be in post-competition periods right now. I guess like the first thing is, what kind of debrief or sort of evaluation process do you go through with your lifters after a competition?
Sure. I think, the first thing that I want to get out of the way here is what you should actually do after a competition, because I think that as the sport has evolved, I've noticed that people have this tendency to just immediately jump back into training.
Yeah, what's next?
And I don't know if I like the trend that's become. I think, especially now, like the idea of off-season type training and taking breaks seems to not be popular. And I don't know. I think that, don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily think that you need to take your foot completely off the gas, but you do need to give your body a rest sometimes. So I always encourage my athletes, at least, during that first week afterward, just take the week off. Unless you have another competition immediately coming up that is a high priority, a week off's not going to kill you. So during that week off, I always take some time to debrief with my athletes. And it really just depends on how the competition has gone, right? Like if it was, the super meet and we've gone, 9 for 9, nothing could have gone better, then there really isn't a whole lot to discuss, right? It's like, okay, more of the same, maybe a few minor tweaks. Maybe we're just, mentally sick of pause squatting and we would really prefer something else. But other than that, more of the same, right? But it's situations like with Perk at Sheffield where we kind of have to say, okay, what do we need to change to have a better outcome next go around? And admittedly, that's one of the silver linings of how he did at Sheffield. I think it is a chance for us to adjust, right? So usually I'll try to discuss back and forth with my athletes in those situations where, what can we do a little bit better here? What led to the outcomes that we got from the competition, and how can we be better next go around? So, like, just as an example, I mentioned Austin hurt his back. So we're really looking at how we can, one, make sure that his training fatigue doesn't get as high as it did, because that's probably the number one thing that led to his back getting hurt. But also just ways in which we can maybe bulletproof his back a little bit more. So we're doing some work with conventional as a result of that. He hasn't pulled conventional, I think, in like 5 years. So we're really just going to try to use that to help strengthen his back a little bit. We're also doing some weighted back extensions, different things like that. It really just kind of is what happened during the competition and how can we best avoid the bad things that happened.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, you said something there that kind of sparked another point in my head, which was like people being too keen to jump back into training and immediately think about what's next, as opposed to just like sitting in that competition or that meet or that experience and like either reflecting on it in a how can I improve, or like sort of like stopping to smell the roses a little bit. Because I think people like often do this, and you'll see this on Instagram all the time. Someone will squat like, let's say 295, and then immediately every single comment is like, when's 300? And it's like, hang on a second, like this person just squatted a PR. So maybe it was a 5 kilo PR, maybe it was a 20 kilo PR. Like, why aren't we celebrating this in the moment? Why aren't we celebrating this performance, this achievement in the moment? Why are we always jumping to what's next? Can you talk on that for a moment?
Yeah, I think there's I forget who I heard say this, but somebody once said to me that all wins feel the same. And I think that I don't know that I like that. I think that I think we've gotten to this point now where in powerlifting, that's the default way that people experience those wins. It really is like, oh, I've just hit a new PB. Cool. That feels the same no matter what the weight is. And in reality, all those things that led up to it are a very different experience, right? All of the different highs and lows and the people that helped you there along the way. And I think if we gave it more of a chance, as you said, and just kind of smelled the roses a little bit more, I think that would be. I think people would find powerlifting a little bit more rewarding. Let's face it, powerlifting is a very repetitive sport, and we might train for months on end just to add 2.5 kilos, sometimes years, honestly. You got to have those tools in your toolbox when it comes to actually just saying like, wow, look at all this stuff that I did that led to this.
And the other thing is like, you don't know whether that's going to be your last PR either.
True.
So like if, my best squat, for instance, is 265. Did that in gym, done 262.5 in comp twice. Now I'm going down a weight class. Am I ever going to squat 265? I don't know. Like I hope I do. I've got faith in myself that I can, but like, I don't know. Will I ever? So like if I squat 260 as an 83, like that would obviously be a PR, but it's not an all-time PR. Does that mean I don't celebrate it? Yeah. Like, I think there's just so much context needed. And I feel like, that situation of like, okay, this person did 295 and everyone's gassing them up. When's 300? It might fucking never come.
Yeah.
They might get hurt and quit, or they might just get bored and quit, or they might just train their asses off and miss 300 a couple of times and then quit. Like, we actually don't know if that's ever going to happen. So like, I guess my advice to people is support your friends no matter what the number is, and stop trying to like tell them that there's another one coming when like you really don't know if it is.
That's very true. Yeah, I mean, in this case that we've been talking about with Perk, like he's never going to have another first Sheffield, you know, like I don't know. We very quickly, like immediately after the comp, kind of had that sort of debrief and just we both agreed that even though it wasn't what we wanted, it was what we needed, and I think that's something else that's important as well. Like when you're looking at just all the different experiences that you have in powerlifting, whether they're good or bad, you really should just kind of take some time to reflect on how you feel about them. And I don't know, we're getting a little deeper than just powerlifting here, but like it's okay to, feel emotions, enjoy things, hate things, all that stuff. I actually think that it creates a better experience with the sport overall.
Yeah, you should actually like allow yourself to be in that experience, feel what you feel, give yourself a little bit of time to feel it before then having that evaluation. Like you said, you give your lifters a week off. Maybe at the end of that following week, then you come and have a debrief about what you need to do or what you're going to work towards next. I think that's really smart, as opposed to like final deadlift is finished and then immediately like let's have a conversation about what we can do. It's like we haven't even basked in the glory or the whatever of the competition yet to even know whether, what we feel or what we want, which I think is super important.
For sure.
Next thing I wanted to discuss was post-comp blues.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this? Have you experienced it?
Oh, for sure.
I think like this one's, even if you have a good competition, I think a lot of times people can experience this because it's like this dump of adrenaline, like all of this time and all of this effort and energy has gone into this one event. Like even if you do amazingly, it's like very hard to get yourself back up to do it again immediately. And people can often go through like these dumps in training where they don't feel motivated or they feel like they don't want to train. How would you kind of navigate this kind of situation if you could sense that your client was going through something like this?
Sure. So I think that just to bring it back to the first thing that I said, I think that week off is kind of a tool for that as well, because I think that period of time off gets you excited to train again. And I think that one of the hardest parts of overcoming post-comp blues is that feeling of, I don't really have something to train for right now. Because let's face it, not every time do you actually have a comp to look towards, right? So just being excited about training again, I think is the number one thing that has to be prioritized when it comes to getting through the post-comp blues period. I also think just having just little like arbitrary things in your training that you can get excited for as well. For some people it might be, your training gets to be a little bit less intense and you get to do some more curls and, that's enough. For some people it's the new lifts that they might get to do. Like, in Perk's case, I think he's quite excited about pulling conventional right now. But I think that the number one thing for me as far as getting through post-comp blues is actually nothing to do with the gym, and that is just giving yourself some time for all of the things that you may have ignored a little bit during prep. Because I find for a lot of people, they put everything into powerlifting, right? Everything, their whole life, their sleep, their nutrition, their friends and family get at least a little bit ignored, like all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, go have a beer and fucking chill out and have a good dinner with your missus, yeah.
Exactly. Like just remember that you have a life outside of the gym, and that ironically will allow you to then come back to the gym and experience it with a renewed vigor that might otherwise not happen if you ignore those things after your competition.
Yeah. One thing I really like about the week off is that most people will gravitate to whatever it is their brain is telling them that they want to do, which I think gives you a lot of like clarity into what that person will want to do next, which I think is super important. Like if someone finishes a comp and you say, hey, have a week off and you can go to the gym if you like and, just do whatever you want, just don't do anything stupid, essentially. maybe they'll go in and they'll try some variation and they really like it, and then bang, we're gonna hammer that the next block. Or maybe they go in and they do nothing that's even remotely close to powerlifting, and they have a really good time doing it.
Right.
And it's like, cool, let's do a few blocks where we don't even touch the barbell. And it's almost like that sort of freedom for them to kind of do what they want to do gives them that like sort of trajectory to decide. And it's like, you don't even have to decide for them. You're allowing them like, hey, go and have some fun. Like, see what you come up with. If you like something, we can put it in your program. If you find that you just want to do SPD again, then cool, we'll go back into that. But it's almost like you're allowing them that freedom to choose.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's actually a really good point. I think that the clarity that comes along with that freedom can be helpful for sure. And now that I think on it, there's definitely been a number of times where, you know, somebody's either tried something in that period of time that has translated over their program, or maybe the opposite, you know, where they are maybe, you know, keen to do something that they think is going to be really cool, and they're like, oh, maybe I don't need this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know,
It's like, I thought this might have been a good idea. Then I tried it and I hated it. So like, let's go back to what you were thinking.
Yeah.
I get that a lot as well.
And that can be good too, because then that gives people a little bit more of a chance to experience those things. And again, like I'm not sure how it is for you, but at least for me, as my coaching programming system has evolved over the years, you know, there is a sort of rigidness to it that is an unfortunate necessity. And we very rarely get periods of time where you get to have a little bit more freedom like that. Like one thing that I've given Perk for this first block, which I kind of refer to as a recovery block, just because he's basically gone prep for powerlifting American Nationals into prep for Worlds into prep for Sheffield, just no real downtime. But I've termed this a recovery block because it's the first block that we've gotten to do in basically a year where he hasn't really had something immediate that he had to worry about. So a lot of this block is about him recovering physically and mentally. So like for him, like, yes, I have him doing some competition lift variants, but his accessories, other than like one or two that I just wanted to try out, or well, I should say that we both wanted to try out, he's got the freedom to do as much or as little as he wants. And I think that alone is especially helpful for him, because he doesn't feel like he's pressured to do all of this extra stuff that under normal meet prep circumstances you kind of need to do if you want to get better.
Yeah, I think that provides like almost like a mental break as well, which like the body being able to do it is one thing, but the mentality to be able to go straight back into another prep is a completely different thing. And if you don't have that full on like 100% all in, it's really difficult to do those additional things. Like the SPD might be very doable because it feels immediate and it feels like it's very closely related to what the goal is. Like, you know, you do sets of squats, your squat's going to get better. Like it feels very immediate. Whereas the assistance work and the rehab stuff and whatever, all that other stuff, like not doing it for a little bit allows you that mental like ability in the future to be able to do it later. It's almost like charging your batteries in that respect in some way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. Again, like just speaking, like we were saying at the start of the conversation, I really do think that, especially amongst the younger lifters, there seems to be this trend of just go all the time. I can't take a day off. I'm gonna get behind, and you're gonna burn out that way. I've seen some very talented lifters, both people that I've coached as well as just like others in the powerlifting community, that have gone too hard for too long without a break. They burn out, and it sucks to see, because you see really talented people just leave the sport entirely.
Yeah, I don't know how much we can do about that though. Like I've thought about this quite a lot, and this is such a tangent, but like I've thought about this idea of burnout a lot, and I think that the lifespan of someone with a hobby is actually just quite short.
That's fair.
And I think a lot of people realize that it's short, and they go all in and realize that it's not going to be forever, and they go all in because they realize it's not forever. And I went back and looked at my first nationals that I did, Junior Nationals 2015. There was 103 males who did
wow.
that competition in Junior Nationals. And guess how many are still competing to this day? This is 10 years ago. Guess how many are still competing?
10.
5. So 5 out of 103 or whatever it was.
That's crazy.
Still competing. And like, I think that just talks to the idea that like, you're probably not going to be in this forever. If you can see yourself being in this forever, then it may be a good idea to take those small breaks. But if you're not someone who can see themselves being in this forever, maybe sprinting is the way to go.
You know, it's funny when I get a younger lifter these days, which isn't very often because I'm very careful with the people that I select, and oftentimes younger lifters don't really fall under the certain parameters that I have for my lifters. But when I do, one of the first questions that I always ask them is, how long do you actually see yourself in this sport? Because I can definitely give you training that will make you a lot stronger, a lot faster, but there's a much higher risk of you burning out. If you want that, that's something I'm okay with, but there is a chance that you might not be in this for the long run. And you know what's funny is most of the time they've told me that they'd rather be in it for the long run, which is quite interesting.
Everyone says that at the time though, you know? Yeah,
that's true. That's true. It is funny though, the few that have answered that way, they've experienced that type of training, and they've changed their opinion, which is quite funny.
Yeah, I mean, like I used to think that the best powerlifters were the people who'd been doing this for 15 years, and all the world champions were in their early 30s, because that's the time that it took to build the muscle and get the strength. But what we've seen in the most recent years is that people are actually getting to that peak strength a lot earlier. And I think what I used to think was like, take your time, you know, don't rush the PRs. Like if you last longer, you'll be stronger, essentially. But what we've kind of seen is that the progress that you can make as a teenager in early 20s, particularly a male teenager, early 20s, is just so much greater at that period of time in your life that like if you waste those years, someone else is going to beat you. Someone else is going to get as strong as they can in that time as well. So it's almost like I've changed my opinion on that a lot. In that like teenagers and early 20s lifters can get so much stronger in that period, proportionally to their late 20s and early 30s and stuff like that. That you almost like, if you want to be the best, you have to make up that time.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you mostly. But I do still think that you see people that start a little bit later that have quite good performances out there as well.
Of course. I guess like what I mean is like, it's obviously not going to be only people in their mid-20s winning. Like I still think that there's going to be older people who are winning. It's just like what I thought before was that it was, unless you were in this for 15 years, you weren't going to be the best. And I just don't think that's true anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think just because of the culture and social media, you're definitely seeing people. It's more common for people to start younger. I mean, you could look at Perk. He started quite young, and he's 26 now and putting these crazy performances on. So I guess that kind of validates both of our points. But I think because you see people starting younger and younger, I guess you definitely don't want to douse those flames if somebody is really excited about training.
Yeah.
And if they do have that potential, then you should foster it for sure.
Yeah, totally. So how do we as coaches then decide what's next for someone? Like, does it come off the back of, what's that person's goals, or is it more like, hey, that comp went well, this is a trajectory? Or, like, how do we kind of weigh those things up?
I think honestly, it all does kind of come back to the lifter in a way. We are in a lot of ways, but they're humble servants, like if I'm dealing with a lifter that, wants to go on and like, let's just say they've had a really great comp and have the chance of, winning a national championship, then, that should be, as long as that's what they want, that should be what we work towards. Whereas, if you're working with sort of the local meet hero kind of thing, then might have a little bit more freedom there. I think in my case, it really is just kind of about setting the lifter up for the most success possible. Like, if we're talking, maybe an average lifter in the States that is good enough for like the national championships, for example, that's kind of what the competitive year might be centered around. So depending on how many years they have in the gym, deciding how much or how little to compete outside of that, so long as they're continuously qualified, and just kind of helping them set up for that. And also just kind of depending on how much experience they have in the gym in general, deciding whether or not we need to really kind of take a step back and allow a little bit more non-specific training, that sort of deal, focus on accessory work, which I don't know how it is over here, but in the States, there does kind of seem to be, like I alluded to it before, the idea of like the off season or time outside of that golden microcycle seems to be less and less these days, which is really interesting. Like I know I've heard Noriega talk about really wanting to like find a way to like step outside of that golden microcycle again with his clients and still see similar levels of progress. Like, I think we need to look at that idea of more periodized training in terms of the goal not always being, ram the golden microcycle down the athlete's throat and constantly just try to, reuse and recycle the same thing over and over again. Again, I can't necessarily speak to everything here in Oz, but at least in the US, that does kind of seem to be the predominant thing. And I think that's what, again, might lead to some higher levels of burnout. So at least for me, I'm trying to foster that with my clients, like having some periods of time where we're not necessarily going 100%, maybe where our frequency's down a little bit, or, we're stepping away from some of the things that we know works really well for a little while. If anything, just to make sure that when it is time for us to put our foot down on the gas, we can actually do that and it not crush the lifter,
Yeah, like I look at programming through like the 3 ways which we can get better, and like that's kind of how I decide what we do. And it's size of the muscle, all of our hypertrophy work, all of our accessories, that kind of stuff. It's the technique of the lift, like the motor recruitment, and then it's the nervous system, like those 3 things, right?
Right.
Those are that's the 3 things that I look at in a program. So when we're close to a competition, 2 of those are going to be dialed up. The focus on that hypertrophy stuff is going to be pulled back a little bit. When we get further away from competition, we still keep those other things in, but they just kind of dialed down a little bit. So like in the idea of the golden microcycle, like I think there's a golden microcycle for the different phases. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. It's like the phases look reasonably similar. We just like push up one thing, pull down the other thing in the same amount of degrees so that we're still like pushing ourselves. We're just not pushing that particular quality as hard. So we're like at all times we're always getting some of those 3 qualities, just sort of turning them up and down based on the phase. That's kind of how I go about things.
Yeah.
I don't know how most people do it. I think the idea of like the golden micro is definitely popular here. It's definitely a lot of doing the same thing over and over again, making very, very small changes from block to block. Like that's very common, which I think is common over in the States as well.
Right.
I do like to change blocks a little bit more than most people, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for us, I would say the only big difference, I shouldn't say this is the case for everyone, but at least for me, one of the things that I think I try to do that's a little bit different that I've seen success with is that hypertrophy lever, I don't turn it down during prep. I try to emphasize all of those things at the same time, and that's what I think has produced some of the best results for me.
And when I say that, just to clarify, I don't mean like going from 20 sets to like 5. I mean going from 20 to like 16. Like very, very small changes from block to block.
Yeah.
And it might be the top set was a triple when the hypertrophy stuff was being pushed. And then now the top set's a single and that hypertrophy stuff is just a little bit less. And we make up for that with like an extra set of comp squats or 2 extra sets of comp squats or whatever it is.
Right. And I'm not saying that it was that big difference, but for me, that's, I would say the only big difference between like hypertrophy protocols and meet prep protocols might be that there's maybe just a little bit more intensity on the hypertrophy work. But the volume, other than maybe like the last block or two, really doesn't change a whole lot. And I do find that that's been quite effective, not only for continuously making better progress for the athletes throughout prep, but has also, I found, made peaking a little bit easier. Like when an athlete is really putting a lot of effort into their accessory work leading right up to competition, pulling back on it.
Fitness is better, yeah.
Yeah, pulling back on it gives them a little bit more of a boost than you might typically see. But again, then we run into that problem of, well, we've been redlining this whole go. So, you know, now we have to arguably take a greater step back. So maybe it does just kind of even out all the way.
Yeah, what I kind of think is like you may not even have to change the prescription of the accessories during a peak. You may keep it all identical on paper, but what you get in reality is that because that lifters put more effort into their top sets, they just don't have as much gas left for the accessory work. So it kind of, in a way, like auto regulates itself.
Yeah. That's true.
So you may just find that someone's doing 5% less volume in terms of load and reps, but the number of sets they're doing is the same. It's just they don't have that same juice left for it after doing harder squats, harder deadlifts, harder benches. So yeah, like it may even be that the prescription is identical. We just may see a little bit of a deprioritization because of like what they've got left.
Yeah, I remember back in our time when I was here, you know, almost 10 years ago, it was quite common back then to just see people skip all their accessories in general.
Still happens.
That's wild to me.
Still happens, man.
That's so wild.
Chris? Chris loves to skip his accessories.
That's funny. Yeah.
Oh dear. All right, let me check what was next on my notes. What are some of the psychological considerations we can have post-comp? We spoke a little bit about post-comp blues, but what are the other kind of things that may affect what we decide to do based on sort of the information someone's giving us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all going to come down to how the lifter is feeling, right? Like if they're super gung ho, you know, even after everything, you know, we might be able to go a little bit harder. For me, like I always do kind of have that idea of burnout in the back of my mind. You know, you've sort of said it may be unavoidable eventually, right? But if we can put that off, you know, for as long as possible, that's important. And sometimes when somebody is quite gung ho to get going again, it can be detrimental to hold them back too much. You know,
Yeah.
so like no matter what, I'm always giving somebody that week off if I have the chance to, if they don't have an immediate reason to go back into training. But you know, like I said, if somebody's quite gung ho, their first block back might look a little bit more like something similar to a comp block compared to somebody who, you know, comes to me and is just like, oh, everything hurts. I don't want to touch a barbell. All that stuff. Like that person, I might honestly give them a couple weeks off. Like that type of person might, you know, like they just need time away from the gym. And again, I think that some people are a little afraid of that, but as you mature as a lifter, I think being able to acknowledge like, oh, it might be best for me to take some time away, that will actually serve you better in the long run. So it really just kind of depends on how you're feeling both mentally and physically. I would say any lifter that's getting done with, say, nationals, for example, you know, take some stock of both your mind and your body, mentally, like, does the idea of stepping foot in the gym right now sound good to you? You know, just going to do a squat, a bench press, or a deadlift sound like it would be fun, or does it sound like you would literally rather be doing anything else? You know, and then on the physical side, like, you know, do you have injuries from prep? You know, are you still, you know, sore like you're 80 years old, or do you feel quite fresh? Have all those considerations in mind when you're deciding what to do next, because if you just ignore your body and redline it, you're just headed for disaster either way, either physically, mentally, or both.
Yeah. One thing that I like to do with my clients, like even like after a block, a lot of the time is like ask them, is there anything that you're doing right now that you're hating? Is there anything that you're doing right now that you're loving and you absolutely want to keep in, maybe even push harder? Is there anything that you're seeing other people in the gym do that looks interesting or looks fun? Because I think a lot of that kind of stuff can drive the physical through the idea of like buying into something new. And as long as it's not too far removed from what I would consider to be ideal, like fucking go for, by all means, I'll make that change. If it's as simple as like, hey, I don't want to do pull downs, I want to do pull ups, or I want to swap my chest pressing for weighted push ups or dips or whatever. Like that kind of stuff makes such little difference.
Right.
That what we probably want is the buy-in and the effort to be high on that stuff, as opposed to, hey, do this optimal thing at 50% or 60% of your effort, rather than do this very slightly suboptimal thing at 100% effort.
Yeah.
So like that's something that I often ask my lifters after comp or even after a block, like, what looks fun right now?
Yeah. I think I would argue that we could probably get some darn good ideas just by listening to that voice in our head when it comes to training in general. Or even just like, hey, what do you think would work?
Yeah.
You know, we were having a conversation off mic about Liz Craven's training and how that resulted for you. One of the greatest realizations that I made about Perk's training came from something that he said to me, and that was that when he was having the most success in training prior to me becoming his coach, he never really did anything super like heavy in terms of like singles on squats. And I could not figure out his squat for the life of me for, you know, the better part of a year. And then when he said that to me, I was like, what if we just never do singles? And then that's kind of become our default strategy, has been just doing heavy rep sets for his preps. And that has worked well. Obviously, he squatted, you know, 323 for a world record. That's worked so well. And it has yet to fail us in terms of him making progress that way. So I think to those lifters that are really thinking about this post-competition, you know, if you do work with a coach, or even if you're, you know, programming for yourself, don't be afraid to like listen to the things in the back of your head when it comes to things that you think might be fun and that might work, because you never know. Those little intuitions might actually lead to something that allows you to make better progress in the long run.
And even if it's something like that's such a small change, like, you know, the difference between doing singles and doing triples is not very big in terms of like the physiological difference. But if the buy-in is there and the psychological advantage is there, and you're going into it expecting it to do something, the effort is going to be there subconsciously. And the training itself is probably going to be more productive because you think it's going to be more productive.
Agreed.
And I think that's super important. It's like to go back and think like, hey, what has worked for me before? Like maybe we should do that again. And if you genuinely think that it has worked for you, you will probably go into it with more effort and buy-in, and it probably will work.
Oh yeah. Like for me, my biggest challenge with Perk right now is just kind of getting his deadlift to show up. And his bench has been good in training, so I guess getting it to translate to the platform. But like, I'm taking that same concept that I just talked about with reps and his first like actual block back. We're really just going to focus on the reps for the first time ever. Like the other two lifts, we've always done some form of fatigue single, something. This go around, we're just literally going all reps. And I think that comes down to, I know that has always worked well for him in the squat. And also, I just need to give him some more time away from like the really heavy stuff on that. But I have a sneaking suspicion that I'm going to find out that is also the thing that's going to work well for the other two lifts.
Why do you think that's the case?
I think, well, this gets into like the way that I look at programming for a lot of lifters. In Perk's case, he's, a small body lifting very heavy weight. And I think that those type of lifters tend to be quite good at repetitions. Because the distance that the bar is traveling is not as far, so they tend to be able to crank out a lot of reps. But when you start to get a little bit more intense, they kind of die off a lot quicker. Like people always look at Perk's squats and are like, "Oh, he had so much more," when in reality, not really.
He's also just so fast twitch that it's like
true.
He would be the kind of guy who could do like a 40-inch vertical. He probably can
could
do
dunk at one point.
He probably can dunk. And
Not
like,
now,
and he's
but
like
he could.
5'6", 5'5", whatever he is.
He's like 5'3", but don't tell him I said
he's
that.
fucking short, and he could probably dunk. But like, he's so fast twitch that he can't grind a rep. So like, if he does something that's 5 kilos below his max, it's gonna look like a 6.
Yep.
Which
Exactly.
there's like Aiden Potts is like that. I don't know if you know Pottsy here in Australia, like particularly with his squats, like he moves so quick, and it just falls off at the top end because he's just so fast twitch. And you have to be super careful with those kind of lifters accruing too much fatigue, because if they do move slowly, it just completely saps them.
Yeah.
And also you got to be so careful with the temp selection in meats.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, sorry, I derailed where you were
Oh
going.
no,
Keep going.
no. That's all good. But yeah, I don't know. I've one of the problems that we've had as Perk has gotten stronger, and I swear I do coach more people than Perk. But one of the problems that I've had with him since he's gotten stronger is just he just accrues fatigue so quickly. He's such a small body lifting so much weight, and I do think that's what's contributed to his back, because he hasn't really hurt his back prior to this, but low back fatigue has been a mainstay of a lot of our comp prep blocks that I've always kind of had to monitor that. And at least in my experience, a lot of smaller lifters in general, that tends to be where fatigue manifests the most, just because of how they're typically built, male or female. And so I think that's probably going to be just intuitively, we've got to stay away from like the truly heavy stuff for longer periods of time. Plus, technically speaking, you don't have to do crazy heavy top sets to build. Like there was a time where you would just linearly run through the rep ranges, mind you, maybe a little bit aimlessly, but back in the day, that was like how everybody did it, and they still got stronger. Maybe that's the case for some people. Like you don't always have to do the Instagram friendly single before all of your back down sets. You could technically just do the back downs, and you'd probably get stronger.
And you might actually have more energy for those sets, and they might end up being heavier. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's a big problem a lot of people fall into, is trying to always test the waters and see, hey, is this working?
Yep.
When if you just understand training principles, you don't need that single in there to know that the training is working, or to know that it's in the right productive zone.
Yep.
To know that it is going to be working. And I think a lot of times people put so much emphasis on these top sets, these singles, when they're like 5-7 blocks away from comp.
Oh yeah.
It's like, let's just do the stuff that we know is going to help you, and probably do a better job of it, because you're not so focused on this single and this performance of this single. And I think that's really smart.
Yep. And I think more people could deal with some, speaking of like post-competition period, you could probably deal with some more blocks without the crazy heavy stuff, and you'd probably find that you will be better set up for your competitions that way.
Yeah, the issue that I've had a lot of particularly younger lifters who I'll just remove top sets for 2 blocks or so, and then they'll be like, man, I'm kind of bored. Like I want to do something heavy at the start. And if that's what they need to stay engaged and like give the full effort to all those sets, then I'm totally cool to give it to them, provided it's not like taking away from that bulk work.
Yeah.
Yeah, having that enjoyment is like so key.
For sure.
So obviously you coach Perk. Have you mentioned that yet in this podcast?
Yeah.
So Perk's obviously done back-to-back comps, and now you're mentioning that, you know, he's a little niggly, he's a little slightly bit burnt out, body's feeling it a bit. How do you think that these top lifters have done so well to just go back-to-back lately? Like we've seen, you know, someone like Agata who's just gone like, I don't know how many meets she did last year, like 25 or something, and like just PRing all the time, and then coming to Sheffield and just beats her own world record by 5% again. And like, how do we think that some of these top lifters are able to just continually back it up?
So the secret is that you're going to want to do 6 SBD sessions.
Now, isn't it 7 now?
It is 7 now. Yeah,
She's crazy.
I sat with Agatha and her coach Powell after Sheffield, and Powell was explaining to me like how he does it with the way that he periodizes for her, and I mean it actually is quite smart. But yeah, I don't know how the hell. Agatha's just a different breed.
I mean, some of those, like, let's be real, some of those sessions are not hard.
No, that's
like,
actually exactly it. They're like RPE 2.
Yeah, a few of them, like 3 of them per week, are like actually quite easy, just accumulating a bit of volume.
Yep.
So it's not like 7 hard SPD sessions in a week. So like I think it's maybe gone a bit overboard. Like, oh my gosh, she does 7 SPD days. She doesn't really do 7 primary SPD days. She does like some.
She does like 1 or 2 that are hard, one like medium, and then the rest are literally like at 55%. Like she gets them done in an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
So as far as going back to back, like I think a good example to look at would be maybe some of like the European lifters. You know, because they have quite a lot of comps that they will typically do. Like, you know, you'll see some people do like we'll say the UK, for example. Like, you know, you might see, or actually, let's talk about Sweden. So you'll see some of the Swedish lifters where they might do their nationals and then Nordics and Euros and then Worlds, and then, you know, in the case of my newest client Gustav's Sheffield. You know, you'll see them go back to back a lot. And I think that comes down to prioritization more than anything else. Just knowing like which comps you have to be truly ready for, and then which ones you can train through. But I also think it means knowing yourself and or your lifter if you're a coach, being able to understand how to get them to perform well. And I guess that kind of comes down to like stuff that we've talked about already, like having, you know, the quote unquote golden microcycle, understanding how your lifter reacts to, you know, hitting a certain number of sessions and knowing, you know, what you can expect out of them. Like the way I've done it with some clients that have had to compete very close back to back is just kind of knowing like, okay, this is the higher priority competition. And then almost just kind of structuring the blocks. Like another one of my clients, Keenan Lee, should he win PLA Nationals, which is what we're getting ready for now, that's at the beginning of April. And then Worlds is June. So we're going to have to compete back to back pretty easily. Now, not to say that Anatoly is not a beast. He is insane. But compared to the person that he's going to have to beat to get the spot, which is Anthony McNaughton, Anthony looks like the stronger lifter right now. So I'm going to have to prioritize our block into PLA Nationals compared to Worlds. So, you know, it really is just kind of about periodizing things correctly and knowing what competitions are more important. And I think that as you age as a lifter, that has to be something that you and or your coach starts to learn. You can't redline for every competition. You know, maybe if you're like a fresh junior, you know, you can always go RP 10 million and be ready to go. But as you age, you know, you'll start to find that you probably only have that one truly special, maybe 2 peaks within that year that can go exactly how you want them to. Otherwise, if you try to do that for too many comps, you're going to find out really quickly that that's just not going to work out that way.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see how lifters go this year with Sheffield World Games all in a row, and then Sheffield again. We had Evie on. She was here, and she spoke about prioritizing Sheffield, and then coming into Worlds, kind of being able to chill a little bit into Worlds to secure her Sheffield spot for next year, but then also be able to kind of give World Games like a decent crack as well. So similar idea to what you're saying. Something you mentioned, you're now coaching Gustav Hedlund.
Yep.
We spoke a little bit offline about you kind of being, this is completely off the topic of post-com stuff, but you kind of being like a little bit, feeling like a lot of pressure.
For sure.
To coach someone so good and take over the reins of someone who's so accomplished and so experienced in the sport. Can you talk about that and kind of like how you feel in that situation? And
sure. So when Gustav asked me to be his coach, which very cool feeling, of course. He's world champion, Sheffield champion, very experienced lifter. On one hand, the experience side of me is coming at this just like I would any other client, and that's, I'm sure you feel the exact same. Like, when a really talented lifter asks to work with you, that's how you have to come at it from a professional standpoint, and that's exactly how I'm treating it when it comes to running his training, interacting with them, all that stuff. But on the other side of it, mentally, I've got the world champion of arguably the most competitive class on the male side coming to me saying, hey, I need you to get me stronger because the field continues to grow and get even crazy stronger. And there is a level of panic that arises in you when that happens, I think that as a coach, and for anybody out there that is a coach, I'm sure you know that feeling no matter what. When you have a lifter that you want to perform. I mean, I want all my lifters to perform very well, don't get me wrong, but when you have a lifter in a very specific scenario that has to perform well, you get a very similar feeling. And to me, I think in these types of situations, I always say to myself, you have a stack of undeniable proof that you can build this person into something even better than what they already are. And that's what you have to rely on in this case. Your feelings might say all these, panicky things to you, but that's when logic has to kick in, and you have to say, no matter what, you have the proof that you have the tools to get this person to where they want to be. And you're going to see 930 plus out of him. I can tell you that now.
Hell yeah. I think that's a really good point, is like, although this person maybe have such experience and whatever, they're still a human, and you have all this experience working with humans, and you have this system that you've developed working with humans that has garnered results, like you just said. Like, you've got this proof. So I think it's really important to stay true to your system and your process.
Yep.
And not get caught up in the name of the person you're coaching. Correct. And try to do things differently, or reinvent the wheel, or try this new thing with this new person, or try this advanced technique, or try whatever. Right. You have to trust your gut and your systems and all the evidence that you've collected over the 10 years that's going to be what's necessary for that person as well.
Yep. And I do think, I mean, especially with Gustav, because he hit a PR total at Sheffield. There were certain aspects of his training that I looked at it and was like, okay, we need to continue doing these things for you to be successful. But then there were other things that I was like, okay, well, this right here is clearly why you're not where you want to be on this lift. So we need to change this. And I think that's what any good coach worth their salt does. When an athlete comes to you, you have to be able to look at their training and say, well, this is working well. We need to keep some aspects of this.
But in the same sort of vein, like, you can't just give them what they've been doing.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Because like, that's why they want to change, is they want your expertise. So you have to give them like the stuff that you know, which means, again, it comes back to like, you have to back your system, and you have to back all the
Right.
stuff you know and all the stuff you've learned. Like you have to put that in the program. And
I guess what I'm saying is part of being a good coach is being able to say, yes, this is my system and this is what I know is going to work well for you, but also being like, this one particular aspect of what you were doing before clearly was working well. Let's make sure we integrate that.
of course, yeah.
And I think that that's the art of being a coach, is being able to make that happen, as we both clearly know.
Totally. Okay, we'll wrap it up there, but is there anything else you want to say about like the post-competition period that we haven't touched on?
The only other thing that I would say is, because we didn't touch on the nutritional side.
Oh, yeah.
I do think that is something that, of course, give yourself a little bit of a break. But one thing that I've been seeing a ton lately, I don't know about you, for whatever reason, during the post-competition period, like the weeks beforehand, even if they're not like dieting like crazy, I've seen a ton of people that just like balloon up afterward. So I would just say, obviously, like, enjoy some food, have a beer or two with your mates, all that stuff, but like, don't go so crazy that you're up a weight class. You would not believe the amount of people that I've seen just like, I'll look at their weigh-ins after, and I'm just like, huh? What did you go and like celebrate Thanksgiving or something, or like?
So Yanni, who trains here, competes in 84s, and her body weight most of the time is between 89 and 91 most of the time. And I shit you not, last comp she did in October, she was 88 and a half on the Monday before the comp. She was like, she did her water load. She was 90 the day before the comp, like in the middle of the day after like a full day of water.
Were you having a heart attack?
And I was, but like it similar happened the previous comps. I was like, okay, like I'm pretty confident she's going to make it. She actually ended up making it like really easy that she was able to eat a little bit before weigh-ins. And
Yuki,
I'm telling
this is
you,
after
I
nationals, you better not give me this heart attack, man.
I shit you not. She was back to 90 like a week and a half after the comp,
That's crazy.
after
man.
making 84s.
That's nuts.
And like, if she's listening, she won't be. Please don't do that again. I'm hoping that we're going straight into Worlds after this one. So I think she should probably take it a little bit more seriously because it's Worlds. But yeah, like she's crazy, man.
That's just
And
wild.
like she doesn't even really look like any different. She's just like the scale is just so far up.
Some people are like that.
Yeah.
Just have an amazing capacity to store water and glycogen, I guess.
Yeah, I know. She responds to the water gut cut more than anyone I've ever seen, to the point where like that 4.5 kilos in 5 days was actually like pretty manageable.
All right.
Anyway. All right, Joe. Thanks for coming on, man.
Appreciate it.
That was episode 45. And we'll be back next week with the Nationals recap show.
Sweet.
So, yeah, we'll talk to you guys then.